Disclaimer. This content is a work of fiction. All characters are fictional. The story is not based on real events or actual legal proceedings. Before the gavel fell. Episode 2. The Hearing That Didn't Exist. Chris Katagis learns something important after Courtroom 4. Silence does not end when you leave the building. It follows you. For weeks after the sealed proceeding, Chris tried to convince himself that nothing had happened. No charge, no record, no consequence. On paper, the day did not exist. But paper was no longer something he trusted. It began with small things. An envelope with no return address left in his mailbox. Empty inside, but addressed correctly. Down to the apartment number he had never listed publicly. A voicemail with no voice, just 30 seconds of room tone, like someone had called from a place too quiet to name. And then the notice. It arrived by email, not certified mail, not courier, not anything official enough to feel real. Subject line, scheduling update. No agency listed, no seal, just text. Your appearance is no longer required. Thank you for your cooperation. Chris stared at the screen. Appearance where? He had not been scheduled for anything. He replied twice. Once asking for clarification, once asking who sent it. Neither message bounced back. Neither received a response. That was when he realized the pattern. Whatever system had pulled his name into Courtroom 4 was still active. It just no longer needed him present. Chris began searching public dockets, not for his name, but for anomalies, gaps, irregular entries, cases that ended without resolution. There were more than he expected. Hearings marked as vacated, without explanation. Motions filed, then removed. Case numbers that skipped sequence, as if something had been inserted and later erased. Most people never notice these things. They are buried in administrative noise. Chris noticed because he had lived inside one. 3 weeks later, he found it. Case 22-417B. No parties listed, no charges, no outcome. Just a single line under proceedings, hearing held. Held when, on what, before whom? The courthouse clerk on the phone told him the file was restricted. Restricted how? Chris asked. Restricted as in it doesn't exist to you, she said, not unkindly. Chris thanked her and hung up. That night he dreamed of Courtroom 4 again. In the dream, the room was empty except for the clerk's desk. The tan folder sat open, but the verdict form inside was blank. No words, no check marks. Just his name printed at the top. He woke before the gavel fell. The next day, Chris received a call from a blocked number. He answered without thinking. Mr. Katagis, a man's voice said, calm and unhurried. You've been asking questions. Chris did not ask who it was. Yes, he said. There are systems, the voice continued, that function precisely because people do not look at them closely. Then why involve me? Chris asked on a pause. Because sometimes, the man said, the record needs a placeholder. The call ended. Chris sat there, phone still in his hand, trying to understand what that meant. A placeholder. Something that exists, so something else can move around it. 2 days later, Chris was standing in a different courthouse. Not his local one. Smaller, older, the kind with narrow hallways and directories that still used removable letters. He hadn't been summoned. He hadn't been notified. But the docket board near the entrance displayed something that made his chest tighten. Chris Katagis. Proceeding review. Room 2C. This time he didn't question it. Room 2C was barely a courtroom. More like a meeting space that had been repurposed. No gallery seating, no jury box. Just a bench, 2 tables, and a single chair in the center. The judge was already there when Chris entered. Not Judge Say, this judge was younger, sharper, less patient in posture. Sit, the judge said, gesturing to the lone chair. Chris sat. There's no hearing today, the judge said. That is important. Chris nodded. However, the judge continued, there was one. Chris waited. 2 months ago, the judge said, a hearing was conducted in this room. No defendant present, no counsel present, no public notice. Chris felt his pulse in his ears. And my name? He asked. The judge did not answer immediately. The hearing concerned procedural authority, he said. Not guilt, not innocence. Authority. Authority over what? Chris asked. Over outcomes, the judge replied. The judge folded his hands. The problem with records, he said, is that once something is written, it becomes real, even if it shouldn't. Chris thought of the verdict form, the raised hand, the sealed folder. What was decided? Chris asked. That the system required insulation, the judge said. From itself? Chris stared at him. You were introduced into the record, the judge continued, because you had no prior record in it. Clean entries create less resistance. So I was used, Chris said. Yes, the judge replied without hesitation. For what? Chris asked. To test whether a verdict could exist without consequence, the judge said. Chris felt cold. And? He asked. And it can, the judge said, as long as it is never spoken. Silence filled the room, thick and deliberate. You're telling me, Chris said slowly, that verdicts can be reached, sealed, and erased. The judge tilted his head slightly. Erased is not the right word, he said. Deferred indefinitely. Why tell me this now? Chris asked. The judge looked at him carefully. Because you've begun to notice, he said. And once someone notices, they become unstable to the system. What do you want from me? Chris asked. The judge stood. Nothing, he said. That is the point. The judge left through a side door. Chris remained seated long after the room emptied. No paperwork was given to him, no instructions, no warnings. When he left the courthouse, the docket board had been updated. His name was gone. In the weeks that followed, the calls stopped. The emails ceased. The silence returned heavier than before. But Chris understood something now. The system did not break. It adapted. Cases did not disappear because they failed. They disappeared because they succeeded in ways the public could not be allowed to see. The verdict from Courtroom 4 was not an anomaly. It was a prototype. And Chris Katagis had been the test case. He stopped searching after that, stopped asking. But sometimes, late at night, he would open public records and scroll until his eyes blurred, not looking for answers, but for patterns. And sometimes he would find a familiar line. Proceeding held, no record available. He would close the browser, sit back, and listen to the quiet. Because once you know a hearing can happen without existing, you begin to wonder how many decisions are being made in rooms you will never enter, and how often the gavel doesn't fall, because it isn't needed. If you enjoyed this story, consider supporting the channel by liking the video, sharing it with someone who enjoys fictional court stories, and subscribing for future episodes. Thank you for listening.